Hi everyone, I'm Sandy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my January reading wrap up. I ended up reading far more in January than I thought, and it was very heavy in fantasy. I had a couple new releases come out. I had one of my most anticipated reads that I picked up. I had a group read for fantasy. All total, I think it was around 7 or 8 fantasy books. Granted, 2 of them were straight rereads. So that was a very heavy part of my reading, though. I just got lost in some of the fantasy, which I thought was really fun and got, a nice release. I like how January shaped up. I left a lot of room for other reads. I wasn't just reading 1001 books or classics. I read a big mix of books. So yeah, it was really good from an overall mix of books perspective. For the 1001 book countdown, which is my main project, I try and read a book a week. I didn't quite make that. I ended up reading 3. And of the 3, my favorite was The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. This book has a main character that if you said, pick the right way or the wrong way, he would pick the wrong way every single time. And after the fact, he realizes, he maybe should not have done that, but it's too late. It's often too late. If he tries to go back and rectify it, he can't find the people he needs to be able to rectify it, or they've already moved on. And he doesn't know what to do and doesn't seem to have the ability to have the skills to kind of resolve any type of real conflict. And he just gets himself into a mess of trouble. And every time he turns around, his life is just getting worse and worse. It was a great Hardy in that it wasn't quite as miserable. He is an extremely unlikable character in the very beginning of this book, and he never kind of recovers from that. So it wasn't making me super sad, everything that was happening to him. But it was a good book. It definitely was a good book. Probably one of my favorite books that I read in the entire month of January, and definitely my favorite one off of the 1001 book list. The other 2 books I had as e-copies, so I don't have them here to show you. I will do a ranking at the end of the year of all the books, but not in the given month. But I've hit 3 so far. It's not exactly on track for that project, but I'm not unhappy with it considering I've already finished another one and I'm over halfway through another one in the month of February already. So we're making really good progress. As far as my fantasy reading goes, I ended up reading, where do I want to start this? I had 3 new releases that I read. The first one was this one, A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. This is a standalone book by T. Kingfisher, and it is one that I had read T. Kingfisher's Nettle and Bone and loved the characters in that, so I was very excited to pick this up. And I was not disappointed with this book. It has a young girl who's around 14 years of age, and her mother is some type of magical person who has ability to make people see and do things or not do things as she wants. She can take over someone and suppress their ability to control anything they're doing or what they're saying. It takes a lot of energy when she does that, but she does have this magical ability. She ends up wants to move from where they're at because the person she was seeing essentially kind of found her out, and they have to move. And they end up going to, I think is he a vicar? I can't remember what his title was. She decides she's going to convince this person to marry her. And she's very good at that because she can manipulate things. She can manipulate emotions. She can manipulate quite a bit. But that person has a sister, and that sister is one of my favorite characters in this entire book. Right at the beginning when this is happening, she has a dream about this negative thing that's going to happen, and the name she gives to the mom, I loved. I thought that was hilarious. She was like, okay, I'm going to listen to you. Whatever's trying to tell me, and what she named it was very appropriate. I loved her as a character. I liked her interactions with the daughter in this, and how the daughter just wants a friend, wants to be loved, wants to be part of a family, and her mother is just absolutely horrendous. She would leave her alone for periods of time. She didn't treat her well when she was around, just absolutely awful. And her plan is to try and marry her daughter off to someone saying that she's older than she is. She's just despicable. About midway towards the end of the book, it got very complicated. The magic got very complicated, and I didn't necessarily follow everything that happened from the magic perspective, but I still read it super fast and did like the characters quite a bit. I don't think it was quite my favorite fantasy. It might be, but it was, I thought, I think T. Kingfisher does an absolutely amazing job of naming characters, especially secondary characters, and she did a great job with one of them in this one too as well. So, but yeah, I would say give this one a read if you like T. Kingfisher's Nettle and Bone. There's some good things in this book, even though the ending didn't quite work for me. The other book I read was the second book in a series, which was Lyrial. This is the Borson series by Garth Nix, and I read this with Dia from Novel Idea, Jack at Spread Bookjoy, and Gemma from Gemma Books. But we read Sabriel, which is the first book, months and months ago, and I honestly did not remember much. In fact, I forgot one of the coolest characters from that book, and then when the character showed up in this book, I was like, oh, okay, now I remember that character a little bit, but a lot of what I had read, I had forgotten. So it was really good to be back kind of in this world, and we are with a different main character, the last one being Sabriel, this one being Lyrial. Lyrial is a student at a school where most of the people have what they call the sight, which is, ability to kind of see into the future. And she's waiting and waiting and waiting to get the sight, and is desperate to get the sight, and doesn't understand why it's not happening for her. This particular book, as we go through it, Garth Nix, again, has another just really fun secondary character that's a dog who has one of the best names. I absolutely the best names. Like in the first book, it was a cat, and this one is a dog. And the dog is like her only real friend. And it's just, their relationship is hilariously funny. The dog is just full of all kinds of snarky comments and is so much fun to read. And the dog is there through much of what's going to happen to her. Eventually, she ends up having to go out on an adventure, and her and Sabriel's story definitely intertwine. There is a secondary character, not a secondary character, there's a second main character in this who is, your stories are kind of going parallel to each other. So you have Lyrial in one, and then you have Sameth in the other one, and you're kind of just going along side by side. It almost felt like it was going to be kind of like a romantic thing in the beginning. That changes much of the way through the book, or part of the way through the book, which I was very happy about. I liked the quest that she kind of went on, not really knowing what she was doing or where she was going. I appreciated that quite a bit. I was only upset that the ending was a cliffhanger. I did not get any type of resolution for Lyrial or Sameth or Sabriel or anyone in the book. So now we're reading the third book in March, because after that, it's like, okay, we can't wait another year to read this book. Let's read it. Let's read it now. Yeah. But I do think that this book I actually liked better than Sabriel, because I liked Lyrial's character, and I like what she was going through, and I like that she was struggling, and I like where she ended up in the story at the end, if only it wasn't for the cliffhanger. Yep. The other book, new release that I read was The Blackbird Oracle by Deborah Harkness. This book is part of the series of A Discovery of Witches. It has the same characters in it of Diana and Matthew and their two kids, and a lot of her family members are in this particular one. You cannot pick up this book and start with this one. It requires you to have read A Discovery of Witches and the other two in the trilogy. Plus, I think there was a fourth one that I don't remember at all. I loved A Discovery of Witches, by the way. One of my favorite books of all time. I love the love story between a witch and a vampire. And I love the aspect that they had of going back in time. I just thought that was truly brilliant in those first ones. In this one, we focus a lot on Diana and her daughter, in particular her daughter. And right at the very beginning, crows show up and deliver a message. And that message leads Diana to her family. I believe it was on her dad's side, if I remember correctly, leads her to them. And that family is there to try and help answer a bunch of questions. There's some great ghosts in that house that they live in. And it really gave me kind of a backstory of Diana that I didn't have before necessarily. Her parents died when she was young, and she went to live with an aunt. And so this is a completely different side of the family now. And they are there to really kind of take her in. They just are trying to answer all her questions. My one issue with this is that a character from one of the prior books was brought back into this story. And she was such a problem in the first books and such a negative force and just so evil kind of in that. And then in this one, she's just kind of like a normal person. I was like, what? And then it felt like it was very unresolved. And I'm like, okay, there must be another book coming, because it didn't really get me very far. I love the backstory. Don't get me wrong. I love that part of it. I loved hearing more about her family, getting to know some other people, some other characters, as well as some of the characters we saw in prior books. That was all great. But yeah, wasn't happy with the ending. Very kind of not lackluster, but not even really felt like a cliffhanger. It just kind of ended. Like, that's weird. But yeah, Blackbird Oracle. But I'm not done with fantasy. I also read Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I read this one because I have her third book is coming out this year in this series, and I hadn't read the first one, so I thought, why not? I'll read this one, see what it's all about. It features a girl who ends up in games with magical people, and she doesn't have any powers and has to survive. Very similar to Clarissa Broadbent, has a very Hunger Games type feel to it. I didn't love the ending. I probably won't go on and read the rest of the series, but yeah, I was kind of disappointed. I'm sure that there are people who absolutely love this, but after having read Clarissa Broadbent's series, which was a human going into vampire games, this doesn't feel quite the same. I wonder, I don't know which one came out first, but Powerless by Lauren Roberts. All right, so now let's talk about the big thing, the big release that happened in the month of January. Rebecca Yarros has a series that started with Fourth Wing. Iron Flame is the second one, and Onyx Storm is the third one. Onyx Storm is the one that came out in January. I spent an entire 3-day weekend rereading the first two books, and the first two books being Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I had forgotten a lot. This one has a main character whose name is Violet, whose mother is the leader of the army, and you end up having to go through these kind of schools. She was always studying to be a scribe. She ends up going on to the writers one, and because her mother told her she had to, and the writers are the ones who ride the dragons, and the dragons are so cool, by the way. I love the dragons in both of these books. Violet ends up, of course, having a love interest who is the mortal enemy, her mother's mortal enemy from, times before, kind of a thing. That enemy part doesn't last super long in these two books, but I did go back and reread those two. Now, I read them very, very fast. I did not spend a lot of time digging into all of the details and spending as much time as I would on a normal read of a book, all because I had this one. Onyx Storm. Look at this copy, though. It's very beautiful. I ordered this as a pre-order and just think it's gorgeous. I love sprayed edges on a book. Oh, so pretty. So Onyx Storm is the third book. And I was disappointed. Yeah, I was definitely sad. At the beginning of this book, you have Xaden, who is Violet's love interest in this, one of her love interests kind of in this. And he has something wrong with him. And throughout the whole book, all we're trying to do is figure out a way to cure him. That's it. That's all that's happening in this. I mean, there's a lot of other battles, a lot of other things, lots of dragons, lots of interesting things happening with dragons. But really, that's all that they're trying to do, is they're going to all these different places trying to figure out a way that they could potentially cure him. At the end, we're in the exact same spot that we were at the beginning. Okay, I mean, my least favorite of the three for sure. I was expecting a bit more. If you're going to spend that much time trying to find a solution to the problem, then figure out the solution to the problem. But at the end of the book, feeling like I was still back at the beginning of the book. And it also brought back a character who I don't know how he got back, because it seems unlikely that they would have given this person back into the school and let them teach after everything he did in the first couple of books. So that was odd to me. But mainly my big issue with it is the end. Yeah, at the end, we're right back in the beginning, right back where we were. There's a chunk in there where something happens and it's super confusing right at the end. Like why? But yeah, my least favorite of the trilogy. I think there's supposed to be 5 books in this series. So I was disappointed though. I really was. I was expecting more of the second book. So as much as I like the first book, yeah, I just, no. And I did like the first book more on the reread, by the way. She wasn't as annoying, the main character. That's what I remember from the first time I read it. So this time, she wasn't quite as annoying, and I really liked I loved the dragons again. The dragons just got me. Loved the dragons. Outside of that, I had An Immense World by Ed Yong, which I finished, which was my nonfiction read. And this book is excellent. You learn a lot about animals. You learn a lot about the different senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, heat, vibrations. It's a lot of info, and it is just kind of an info dump of stuff. So know that going into this. If you can, get the audiobook, which is narrated by Ed Yong. He has a great accent. It's fantastic. And you will learn a lot. The part that stuck with me kind of the most was the section on smell, which is actually one of the first ones. They talk about a dog's sense of smell being so much bigger than a human sense of smell, and how when they take their dog out on a walk, sometimes they'll do a walk where they just let the dog sniff as much as possible and never like says, come on. I've taken my mom's dog for a couple of walks since I've read this book. And I always think of that when she stops and she sniffs, because she will sit on a smell and has no real interest in moving on. And I just thought that was really fascinating. It is a very well done nonfiction book with a wide variety of different character or different animals in it, not characters. So yeah, but you will learn a lot in this, and probably more than you can. I took my time with this one, which I'm very glad I did, because it was a huge amount of information. I also had a vlog where I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold. If you want to go watch that, that's great. I did read the second book in the Green Creek series by TJ Klune, which is Ravensong. But I really didn't talk about it because it didn't really do anything for me. I still love TJ Klune, but this series, and there's a new book coming out soon by TJ Klune, but I'm not sure this series is really for me, where I loved his other standalone books, and I loved the duology of The House in the Cerulean Sea. So yeah, it's just kind of okay. My brain candy read. I should have a series called Brain Candy Reads, because I think that's really fun. My brain candy read was this one. Look at this. Warrior Woman by Joanna Lindsey, written in the 1990s. Has, of course, the shirtless warrior on the front who looks a lot like Fabio. I think it might be Fabio, I'm not sure. And her, this warrior woman. Oh, so good. So trashy. Not nearly as explicit as some romance novels have been for me lately. But I mean, exactly perfect for a mindless read, for a brain candy read. She ends up having to escape her home planet. She ends up on this other planet where there's these warrior men who feel that women can't be warriors, and their relationship. And she has a computer whose name is Martha, and Martha is snarky and funny and does all of this stuff. It's just, yeah, it's exactly as you would imagine. It's a 90s romance with a shirtless character on the front, and it is so fun. I do like Joanna Lindsey. This just takes me back to my early 20s when I was reading a lot of Joanna Lindsey. But oh, look at that. Just absolutely brain candy, super fun. If you like old school romance, this one, and then there's another couple Joanna Lindsey ones I had read recently. I just still really like her, and still do. And surprise of all surprises, I read my first Abby Jimenez, which is Just for the Summer. Now, what I didn't realize is that this was part of a series. I read this out of order. I think this might be book 3, actually. So I don't actually know the other stuff. The premise of this book is fairly simple, where there is a main character who, after he is broken up with someone, the women he was dating find the love of their life. The girl in the story, same thing. People say when she breaks up with them, they find the love of their life. So they come up with this plan of getting together for the summer with the two of them. And maybe after that, they'll both find the love of their life. That's the premise of the story. It was sweet. There was, I think, a kind of like that forced conflict in there. She is a traveling nurse. She has a mother who's very problematic, who ends up coming to visit. She wreaks all kinds of havoc on her life. But as far as she's a traveling nurse, so she can go to where he's at. And they're able to kind of spend the summer together doing a wide variety of different things. And then, of course, there's always some type of a conflict, or she ends up having to move away or moves away. And yeah, but it's not quite boilerplate romance, but very, very fun. And it wasn't exactly the same kind of boy meets girl, boy and girl break up, boy and girl got back together. There's a lot about, working on herself and trying to figure out how she can be in a better place. Things about with her mom, which were really bad, all of those parts in this particular book. So I did like it. I want to read more Abby Jimenez. And I know Abby has a new book coming out fairly soon. So we'll see if I can get that one. But yeah, we'll see. I did like it. As far as romance goes. All right, so let's just do a stack of my massive pile of fantasy books that I read in the month. I mean, I don't even think I can lift this, to be honest with you. That's funny. Oh, okay. We're getting there. Oh, okay. There you go. That is the bulk of them, not including the Lyrial book, right? And not including Raven Song. That's a stack. I have a couple upside down, don't I? Oh, well. Yeah, really interesting that I ended up reading so much, and the rereads of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. It was a heavy reading month. I didn't feel like I was reading that much, but yeah, apparently I was reading quite a bit. I know I spent a full solid 3 days rereading Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and that's pretty much all I did was read those. That's also why all of my 1001 books that I read were super skinny, because I just didn't have that much time to read that much more. So what do you think? Have you read any of these? If you have, what was your favorite? What was my favorite? That's a good question. Which one was my favorite out of this stack? It might have to be A Sorceress Comes to Call, actually. Short of the reread I had of Fourth Wing. That could be. Yeah, possible. Please leave me a comment down below. Love to hear from you. I'm finally kind of back in the mode of making videos a lot, which has been amazing. Super thrilled about that. And so happy to have you here. Hopefully you consider giving me a subscribe and sticking around. But as always, like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.